הפארק כאן 200 אזור. מה קורה? אתה לא אומר שום דבר. עולה עשן שחור במדורות. באזור הטרמינל הישן שקט. יש שם עוד כוחות אחרונים מהאבטחים שלנו. אנחנו באזור המטוס המפנה של הנפגעים.
Man does not live forever. He should put the days of his life to the best possible use.
ולגבי נפגעים אתה יודע משהו עבור. ישנם מספר נפגעים, אני כרגע לא יודע בדיוק כמות הבא.
How to do this, I can't tell you. I only know that I don't want to reach a certain age, look around me, and suddenly discover that I've created nothing.
תוך מצב בקצרה עבור. יש שני חטופים הרוגים, יש מספר מחבלים הרוגים, מספר אוגנדאים הרוגים.
That I'm like all the other human beings who dash about like so many insects, back and forth, endlessly repeating the routine of their existence.
בשלב זה, לפי מה שידוע לי, לכוחותינו פצוע אחד בלבד עבור.
I must feel certain that not only at the moment of my death shall I be able to account for the time I have lived. I ought to be ready at every moment of my life to confront myself and say, this is what I've done. Miss you. Yoni.
We loved and admired each other.
My mother was very down-to-earth, practical woman. My father had great vision. She always said, I'm married to a genius, but somebody has to change his socks.
My father was working. My mother was the person who took care of us, who educated us, who nurtured us. And she would make sure we had the family meals together, the Sabbath meals, and all these things.
My father was a great scholar, editor-in-chief of the Encyclopedia Greca. Used to entertain your very great scholars, all sorts of professors. He and my mother would entertain them in the front part of the house. Was the back part of the house. That's where we kids lived there, kids from the neighborhood. And we used to have enormous pillow fights here. My mother would occasionally open the door and say, "Children, there are people in front." So that's all right. Let's go back and then we'd start it all over again.
Yoni was considered their protector. If there was a problem of protection, he would jump into the danger point. He was a remarkable child. He was a person who didn't mind taking risks.
He was Ido's protector. I was sandwiched in the middle. You know, I could receive but not deliver, so to speak. He always said that he never beat me. He said, I'm disciplining you so that you treat Ida well and also so you learn to absorb pain. So I said, thanks a lot, I got the point.
Jerusalem in these days was not like today. It was a small town, divided city. And Yoni and his family used to live in Pinchot, which was a neighborhood, isolated neighborhood near the border with Jordan.
There weren't that many houses there, a lot of open fields. The neighborhood kids at that time, we used to play outside on the street. Our life was outdoors.
We had battles all over the place. We had Maccabees and Greeks. We went to a little wooded area here, and we had bows and arrows. And there was a sense of great freedom, the vibrancy of youth.
The best and most beautiful days I ever had were those when I was a little child, hiding in huge fields, covered almost completely by grass, looking for ladybugs, seeing the world as the most marvelous place, and grown-ups as veritable giants.
My father decided to leave the encyclopedia to do his research work, USA, Philadelphia. For a few years, that was his plan, until he'd finish his book on the Inquisition.
When we heard that we were going to leave for the U.S., I think I was in the 8th grade, and Ida was a child, but Yoni was in the middle of high school. I think we all broke up crying. I don't remember us crying that often, but it was a terrible crisis for us.
Yoni wanted to stay. He was already 16 and a half years old. At that age, it's very difficult to leave. He had a very active social life. He was the head of the student council. He was enamored with the scout troops.
At the time in Jerusalem, the scouts were extremely important for the youngsters. It was a way of preparing yourself for the future in the army. He was in the Modi'in tribe, and I was at the Metzada tribe. But he was very powerful, and he actually recruited people from our tribe as well, so he was good. His personality attracted the youngsters to come and follow and join the scouts.
Yoni was very charismatic, and I think that he liked leading, but he also felt that it's his responsibility. Charisma is the quality, and leadership is the commitment.
The Boy Scout and the life in Israel made him a real patriot, you know. He was a real Zionist, and in high school, for him to live out of Israel was a big disappointment.
All this space that surrounds me leaves me without any air to breathe. I yearn for a place that's narrow, hot, rotten, filthy. A place that's mostly desert, and that one can scarcely find on a map of the world. The only things people talk about are cars and girls. I think Freud would have found very fertile soil here. My school has about 1,500 students who don't know what they're doing there. It looks more like the Tel Aviv Sheraton than a school. My house is terribly nice, surrounded by lawns and trees. An empty, meaningless life.
An Air France jet was hijacked by Palestinian guerrillas today. On board, some 80 Israelis and 157 other passengers. This one involves an Air France Tel Aviv to Paris flight taken over by 7 members of a Palestinian guerrilla group shortly after an Athens stopover.
For saying him that, look, we have to plan what to do with those hostages, and so he said, yeah, you're crazy. Who can reach them in Uganda, in Entebbe?
Israel is determined with the murderous organizations, will never negotiate. The only place where we can meet with them is on the battlefield.
As a soldier, and he always came first in any course he took. At that time, we didn't make long overseas phone calls. Nobody did. And the connection was with letters.
He wrote because it was an expression of his inner being, of his soul. And remember, we used to wait for the letter. We used to have that flag, you know, the little red flag that they have in these American mailboxes. I used to rush to the mailbox to see if there's a letter, and his letters were always illuminating.
Until now, I must admit, I never felt the country. Never before had I felt this so powerfully. I knew the country existed, that I was living in it, and that if the need arose, I would fight for it. But really to feel the place, the soil, the mountains and valleys of Israel, this sensation I have now experienced for the first time.
He was an unbelievably good soldier. Someone marked for glory. A few weeks into basic training, they took us on a forced march through the dunes, carrying the heaviest guy in each squad on a stretcher. And after a few kilometers, we gave out. And there was just no one there to replace the two guys at the front of the stretcher. And suddenly, Yoni breaks up there, takes the stretcher on both his shoulders, and pulls everybody else to the end, and then turns around and gives us all a berating for being such weaklings. He was driving his own buddies even harder than the staff were. So he was very much admired, but for a long time he wasn't very popular.
I wrote him a lot, he answered a little bit. But I wasn't that interested in stories about the army, more about the I love you part and so on. Once he was in the army, he was 100% there and did everything 100%. And it was difficult for him to finagle, you know, two worlds. To come home and be a boyfriend.
Tutti, my love. The days pass so swiftly here that one loses all sense of time. I miss you more than I had ever thought possible. I realize you have been inducted into the army. Clearly, there are better ways of spending one's years between 18 and 20. I wish I could say I will be beside you all along the path you must take, but it can't be. Each of us must walk this path all alone. I'm writing this just so you'll know that I'm thinking of you and I love you. As I write this, it sounds so very far away. "23rd, 1967. Beloved ones, as the time of discharge approaches, everyone is confronted with the problem of what to do as a civilian. War is hanging over our heads like a swollen balloon, and the battalion is very anxious for me to stay on in the army. Even though I find the army to be of great interest, I fail to see my future in it. There are so many things I want to do, and it's difficult to see myself as an army man all my life. I received your letter in which you described in detail the scholarship awarded to me from Harvard. I'd like you to inform the university that I am interested.
There was always a split in him between the army and the academy. He never signed for 10 years. It was always for 2-3 years, because the struggle or the tension between these two poles of his personality were always there.
I'm not sure that Yoni was a natural soldier. He was very good one, very effective, but out of some kind of conscious process of trying to understand what should be done.
Nasser is not content with mere border incidents. This time, he announces his resolve to destroy Israel. And in mid-May 1967, the might of the Egyptian forces, equipped by the Soviet Union, parades through Cairo en route to Sinai, where it will deploy for the attack on Israel. This is the largest force ever to have been assembled in history in Sinai.
Dear father and mother, not one of us wants war, but we all know for certain we must win. We must cling to our country with our bodies and with all of our strength. Only then will they not write in the history books that once indeed the Jews held on to their land for 2 decades, but then were overwhelmed and became once more homeless wanderers. Tutti, my love. Don't be afraid and don't worry too much. We knew a long time ago war would come, and here we are, a nation at war. Tutti, according to the plans you and I made, we were meant to meet 2 hours ago and perhaps go to the seaside. And now I'm far from there. If there was no war going on here, if I didn't have to go out and kill, and if I wasn't alone without you, it would actually be nice here. A thistle is the flower nearest me. I'm sending it to you. But it will probably crumple away before it reaches you.
Most of our battalion was involved in the heli-borne raid on the Egyptian artillery at Katif.
This was the major Egyptian sort of stronghold in the Sinai Desert that had to be crushed in order for the Israeli army to advance forward.
The Egyptians discovered the landing ground and began bombarding it, and we were the last to go in, so we didn't go in. Yoni was so frustrated that he actually absconded from the company and jumped on one of the helicopters.
He saw that they were going to battle, and he just went into one of these helicopters and took part as a regular soldier, even though he was an officer.
Israel appears to be mounting a quick succession of victories here in the Sinai Peninsula.
Israel is full of rumors tonight, and you can tell something about a nation's morale by its rumors, and Israel's are all a victory.
death face to face, when you're wounded and alone in the midst of a scorched field, surrounded by smoke, with your arm shattered and burning with a terrible pain, then life becomes more precious and craved for than ever. You want to embrace it and to go on with it, to escape from all the blood and death, to live.
When he was wounded, he thought he was gonna die. He realized that to get married, that's what's important for him.
Beloved mother and father, I'm very happy to tell you that Tutti and I are to be married as soon as I am better. I considered going to America for a year without Tutti and getting married later. Now I don't see any sense in this. Nor do I believe that I could stay in America for a year and study there with my heart and my thoughts elsewhere.
And we got married in August, as soon as he could remove his cast.
It was a glorious wedding. In the amphitheater overlooking the Judean hills falling to the Dead Sea. It was an extraordinary view, an extraordinary setting. It represented, I think, him in many ways. He was 21. When I think of it now, he was so young.
April 15, 1968. Dear Bibi and Ido, Harvard continues to be marvelous, even though I'm impatient to return. I continue to run even though I don't have time, but at least I'm keeping fit and not letting myself go. My average for the year is nearly an A and in the top 10% of the class. Tutti and I feel good together. And it's a good thing we're spending our first year by ourselves, away from everyone.
I like Boston. And it seems like two children playing house, you know, that's what it was. It was the first time in my life that I cooked, and Yoni would admire, whoa, what did you make? He always admired everything I did. I remember he asked once he wanted coleslaw. I had no idea what coleslaw was. I still don't know what the words mean. What's cole and what's slow? I was attached to my parents, and there I was only with Yoni. So it's strange, it's sort of lonely. I worked at the consulate. And it was difficult because every day I would know what happened in Israel, because the consulate would get the paper and would get telegrams and so on. And you're not there.
There was a lot of internal terrorism at the time, and so he felt that just a matter of time until there will be another major war.
For nearly 6 hours today, Israeli and Egyptian artillery again dueled across the Suez Canal. UN observers issued 3 appeals for a ceasefire before the shooting finally stopped.
He knew he was a very good soldier. He knew that he was, in many ways, better than most of his peers. He cannot continue the student life when war was raging all over. What's the sense of being a scholar if the whole country disappears?
He was aware of the role that our generation is playing on the stage of history and deeply connected with serving something which is bigger, more important, more kind of powerful than you, namely the fate of the people you are part of.
Reinduction. So they found, apparently, a doctor who was an immigrant. And he apparently mistook the fact that Yoni had a fractured elbow, and he looked at one knee, he thought it was a knee. He said, this knee is fine. And he looked at the other knee and said, this knee is fine. He said, fine, nothing wrong with him. That's how he got into the unit.
We never used the formal real name of the unit, which was Sayeret Matkal, ever. The reputation was mystery. We always liked to say that it was the diamond which is at the tip of the spear. That secret club, so-called, that you wanted to be a member of, even though you didn't really have any idea what it was about and what it entailed to be part of that club.
For me, the unit was something which was like another world, like in the movies. They did different stuff, they behaved in different ways, and the work itself, which is very intensive, very complicated, and very important, and very risky.
And I think it's like a tip of an iceberg, what's known to the public, either participating in war times within the war, or fighting against terror. And the rest is unknown, and I believe will be left unknown.
We live in different worlds, so it's difficult. I'm a curious person. I would ask questions, but I didn't get answers. But there was also a part of me that didn't want to know, and a part of denial in order not to be afraid.
Beloved, the day after tomorrow, you will be 23. Happy birthday. I'm writing this to preempt the thought that may come to your mind. So why the separation? I believe with all my heart that it's extremely important that I be in the army now. We hear the war slogans of millions of our neighbors and their desire to annihilate us, including you, my wife. I realize that it's very hard for you. What's to be done?
He wanted very much to have children as soon as possible. He loved babies, and they loved him. When I realized I was pregnant, I stayed a whole month or so in hospital, just trying, to prevent a miscarriage. He wasn't there days on end, He didn't take special leave. He came when he came.
Beloved mother and father, I haven't written you for a long time because Tutti had problems with her pregnancy. To my great sorrow, Tutti miscarried a few days ago, in the 6th month. The baby girl was born and lived a few days. Of course, she didn't stand a chance right from the start, and we both knew it. But just the same, it's very sad.
I heard from Tutti when we spoke that there is a big problem with her staying all the time alone and Yoni spending so much time in the army. At the time, we're less sympathetic with Tutti because what Yoni did in the army had such an importance in our
period in his life, naturally. Whether you want the divorce or you don't want the divorce, you feel that that's something that you want.
Recently, that I myself am still unable to reach any conclusions, far less see what the end will be.
The hijackers put off their deadline to 8 a.m. Sunday after Israel broke its long-standing policy and agreed to negotiate.
This policy change came today when Palestine hijackers in Uganda released 101 more hostages, but held the Air France crew of 12 and 98 passengers under threat of death.
The Israelis are frustrated and resigned. Frustrated because there's nothing they can do to influence the situation except give in to the hijackers, and resigned to doing just that.
We agreed that the official, the formal resolution will be that we are going to exchange. And it created an atmosphere that helped us to prepare our operation.
We've taken this critical decision primarily because of humanitarian reasons, namely saving the lives of the Israeli hostages in Uganda.
If we shall give up, our position in the eyes of the world will go down. They say here is a country that says you have to fight terror, but when it comes to your place, you do not. If we shall try and succeed, it will be a tremendous victory.
Thursday morning, it became clear that there is going to be some ultimatum. We had to plan within a very tight limit, something that had never been done before, and take responsibility and go and execute it.
We called back Yoni from Sinai because he was busy conducting a special operation on the other side of the canal in Egypt.
When we start to plan, we were sure that we were going to take the whole airport and then to free the hostages. After several times we realized that the right way, it's like a bank robbery. You are going only to the safe, taking the money out. You are not controlling the whole bank.
היחידה התחילה לתכנן את החלק שלה, לשחרר את בני ערובה ולהביא אותם הביתה. יוני היה ברור לו שאין לו את התנאים הכי טובים למבצע. יוני היה מאוד נחוש וראה במשימה הזאת ערך עליון. ההצלחה במבצע הזה יש לה משמעויות מרחיקות לכת.
He didn't have any hesitations. He looked upon it almost as a normal operation.
April 18th, 1972. Dear Mother and Father, after 4.5 years of married life, it's hard to get used to living alone without the woman one loves. But it seems that one can get used to anything. In your letters, you expressed concern.
So shocked and insulted personally, I said to him, Yoni, how can you make it to me? I was your ally. He said to me, Danny, that's life, that's reality, that's...
25 years for the state of Israel. So little and yet so much. How sad that we cannot achieve peace, for that is all we want at the end. What kind of God-forsaken world are we living in? It contains so much beauty, so much grandeur and nobility. Men destroy everything that is beautiful in the world.
There was a mission to the unit to go directly to the Golan Heights to help the forces there to receive the Syrian attack. A company of Syrian commando landed with helicopters very close to the post, and Yoni with his force immediately came to get in touch with them.
And as they came to the place where they thought they spotted the Syrians landing, and suddenly there was a burst of gunfire, and everybody dropped to the ground.
They surprised us face to face against the commando troops. So at the beginning, I didn't see anybody. And then I saw Yoni ahead of me, leading a group of soldiers. He said, like he did all the time, he set the example. Very calm, very not running, as it needs to be. You see your commander and said, okay, if he's going now, I'll join him.
And he started moving forward, and everybody just pulled everybody behind him. And went over the Syrian lines and overcame them. They were outnumbered and attacked from superior positions, had lost only 2 or 3 men, and that was entirely due to his leadership. He did close combat with extraordinary results.
To kill at such very close range isn't like aiming a gun from 100 yards away. That's something I had already done when I was young. I've learned since how to kill at close range, too. Pressing the muzzle against the flesh and pulling the trigger, the body muffling the sound of the shot. It adds a whole dimension of sadness to a man's being. Not a momentary, transient sadness, but something that sinks in and endures.
The Yom Kippur War affected him, I think, more on a grand scale. I think he saw that there is a certain lack of holding power in Israel for anything that's long and drawn out.
This has been the hardest war we've known. At least it was more intense, more costly in dead and wounded. More marked with failures and successes than any of the wars and battles I have known. We're all searching for a different place. A beautiful and glowing place. A place worth waking up in. The world is full of beauty, and the ugliness in it only highlights that beauty.
Gloria, she was at that time my secretary. A very good secretary, a very beautiful, handsome girl. One day, she came to me, told me,
I want to go to the best battalion that you have. And he said, you should go to גדוד 71, and there is a new commander there, and I think it's good for you.
שהשיגו תוצאות טובות מאוד. היחידה שספגה אבדות קשות במלחמה שהוקמה לחלוטין. לדעתי השיגה...
I don't want to say I fell in love in the minute I saw him because it will sound stupid, but there was something in the minute I saw him.
Maria was a very free-spirit woman, and Yoni was an army man, a commander, a tough guy.
I was young and very enthusiastic about life, and he didn't think about himself that he can, again, fall in love, be devoted to love, open himself to love. He didn't relate to me at all for the first 4 months. I was doing paperwork, organizing things for him. On his bed, you could see the poets he read. When you see it, that somebody that deals with army all the time, his private time is poetry. And it was amazing. And then I decided that I have to make him love me. And I worked on it. I don't want to... I worked on it. And in the end, it happened.
Bruri mine, I love you very much. I say it with a cry, and with somberness, and with longing. And I love with almost unbearable restraint. You're the axis round which I turn. Sometimes I circle round very close, and sometimes the circle is very wide. But always round and round you, the center.
Sometimes she showed me the notes he would leave for her. He all the time said about her, my love, my wife.
There was a good chemistry between us. We talked a lot. We hugged a lot. I was in paradise.
Bruria, I've been thinking of how to change my way of life so that we could live together like a normal couple, and as yet have not found a solution. I'm thinking of the future. Maybe there, in the future, the real key lies. Dear Bibi, it's fairly certain I'll get command of the unit and start the overlap quite soon. I like the idea of returning to the unit, and I'm anxious to get there as soon as possible.
He had a reputation of being a great combat commander, proven, in many, many situations.
Whenever there was a very difficult drill physically, he took part of it. It's not common. It's not common the commander of the unit is taking part in all the difficult drills.
And he would be there to try to push us to see that we would go beyond what we thought were our limits and break the barriers every single time and do the impossible. And, very often we felt we knew better. And I think that created some friction.
Yoni wasn't cut from the stuff that people from the unit are made of. His father was a professor, and he spent some time in the United States, and he was different from the other people in the unit.
His personality was more complex. And I think it didn't make things easier for him, and it didn't make things easier for us.
Dear Mother and Father, the Army burdens me with an enormous load of work and doesn't allow me a minute for my private affairs. There is a real satisfaction in this kind of work, but it's immensely tiring. Nearly 11 years have passed since I left home for the Army, and I am seized by a longing for family togetherness. I look back on breakfasts in the kitchen with you and Bibi and Ido, on Passover nights, or the lighting of the Hanukkah candles. I halt the frantic rush forward and all that still needs to be accomplished. I plunge into the past, into the warmth of a loving family. It's a world of its own, the world of an enchanted child.
He was a complicated man with internal conflicts, with difficulties, and still had a huge responsibility on his shoulders in such a young age.
The intensity of the way that he approached things, I think also exhausted him. On one hand, achieving and going into unachievable heights, and on the other hand, not getting and possessing the simple things that make people happy.
Bruria, I find myself at a critical stage in my life, facing a profound inner crisis that's been disturbing my whole frame of reference for a long time. Until now, the only solution suggested plowing the same deep furrow in the same field. My work possesses me, and I don't want it to. I do things because they have to be done. The same haunting question returns, can I work like this and wear myself out? And the answer is always, I must persevere and finish what I've begun. Good that I have you, my Bruria, and good that I have somewhere to lay my weary head. I know I'm not with you enough, and that it's hard for you to be alone so much, but I trust you, me, both of us, to succeed in living our youth to the fullest. You to live your youth and your life, and I, my life, in the flicker of my youth. It will be okay.
Israeli government ministers worked into the Jewish Sabbath tonight on negotiations for the release of about 100 Israelis and other Jews from Palestinian hijackers in Uganda.
Today they assembled their remaining 110 hostages in small groups and surrounded them with dynamite to await Sunday's deadline.
Time was running out, and the fear, anxiety, and frustration of the relatives of the Israeli hostages held at Entebbe spilled out into an angry outpouring of emotion. Give the hijackers what they want, they screamed. Just let our loved ones come back alive.
Well, the Prime Minister, he felt that he is the man who is responsible for their life. They came to him to talk, says, look, save our children.
The Entebbe operation had to be prepared in about 48 hours. The unit basically is not working this way. In the unit, you prepare an operation for a long time, and when it is ready, you go. Yoni worked very hard. He didn't let any detail go away. Didn't sleep all night and stayed in the office. And in the morning, the plan was ready.
And here, we are talking about, we are Friday. We know that the next day, Saturday, we are going to fly to Entebbe. to an unbelievable raid, very limited time. Planning is doing on the fly, and planning is not good as it should be.
We looked to movies from Entebbe of Idi Amin arm. And in one of the movies we saw black Mercedes.
It seemed to be a good idea to use vehicles that are similar to what they have, to use uniforms, to use some camouflage, to give the impression, at least for a few minutes, that this is part of the Uganda army.
The final plan was to come with 4 Herculeses. The first one, with the 2 jeeps and the black Mercedes of Sayed Matkal. They have enough soldiers in order to storm the main terminal and to kill all the tourists around and to take the hostages back.
The first time that they thought maybe this is going to occur is after the final simulation exercise. Chief of Staff said he's going to give his approval and recommendations to the government to carry out this operation.
The Prime Minister, he wasn't convinced about assurance that these boys can negotiate 4,000 kilometers away from home to cross different countries. Our planes were unarmed. It wasn't fighters. It was cargo planes.
The Entebbe operation, it was something beyond the horizon. To fly one way several thousand miles from here, nobody did it before.
We were professional soldiers, and we felt that the simulation is, it's maybe good show off to show the chief of staff, but we feel that, we are actors in a movie. It's nothing.
Lots of information is coming in and lots of confusion and information that contradict the other information. So everything is quite chaotic. And Yoni gathered all of us, the ASAL team. We'd been about 30 or 32 guys, that's all. And he explained what should we focus about. You should get prepared for surprises from all directions.
Concentrate on the mission. We are not there in order to kill soldiers. We are there in order to free them.
We got onto the plane, took off from Sharm el-Sheikh towards Entebbe. The government was still debating whether the operation will be approved or not. And we told him, Yoni, no chance for the operation to be approved, don't worry.
The last leg was a very long one. Surprisingly, most of the people in the unit never been out of Israel in their life, so this was the longest flight for almost everyone there.
Yoni came out and he told us the government approved the operation. And then we started to panic. You look around your friends, you ask yourself, okay, who will be alive and who will be dead when we go back? We get closer to the Entebbe, it was almost midnight. There was a thunderstorm outside, and the airplane was very dark. And at that moment of time, Yoni went all the way from the rear of the Hercules to the front part. And he stopped and smiled to each troop and shook hands or touched the shoulder of everybody. I never experienced it before or any other commander doing the same.
When the airplane touched the ground, the door was open, and we went out. And I remember the silence. There was no noise anymore. And then I remember the darkness. There was no light anymore. And then I remember that I was frightened. Because of, like every kid, silence and darkness.
We see the Ugandan guards as we're driving towards the terminal building. I see the guard on the right side. He was aiming to shoot at us. Yoni and the officer who's sitting behind him pulled out the handguns that we had with silencers on him and...
Daring raid for freedom. Crack troops were flown 2,300 miles to Uganda for a lightning strike at Entebbe Airport to rescue hostages held for a week by the hijackers of that Air France jetliner.
It was during the week of the Bicentennial. We were a group of Israeli students at MIT. We heard in the news that there was an Israeli rescue mission and that the hostages had been freed and that one Israeli officer had been killed. I said, why did they say one officer?
I was sharing with Bibi my concerns. That is, I had called him to Boston. I woke him up and told him that I think something might have happened to Yoni.
I had a feeling that something's happening. I had this restlessness that there's something I must do urgently and I don't know what it is. It was very strange.
I called the unit and I asked what's going on. And I don't know who talked with me. I don't know the name of the girl who talked with me. But she said there was something, and I said, and I asked her about casualties, and she said, I don't know. I think she knew, because I felt something on the telephone.
I went back, I called my wife, waked her up, and told her the operation succeeded. Yoni is dead. Please go down to Ruya, wake her up, and stay with her because someone will come to inform her, and it's inconceivable to me that she will hear the knock on the door, tell her what happened, and sit with her until someone comes there.
But I said, how am I going to tell her? I can't look at her, I can't say it, she said. And he says, Nava, you need to do it. And then we hung up, and I stayed there for about 2 hours. I didn't know what to do. I think it was 6 o'clock when I went down, and I knocked on the door.
I didn't think she came to tell me that Yoni died. It was a shock. She didn't say it right away. She said something like he was wounded. I don't remember exactly the words. And I remember that the word that was in my head was why. I couldn't. I said, why? I felt why? Why? Why should it? Why it's like this? That was the. That's it.
It was as though somebody amputated my arms and my legs and tore a piece of my heart. Yeah. It was just torture, driving this at night. We came to the place where my parents had lived, and there was a big window in this cottage that they lived in. And my father was walking sort of back and forth with his hands in a typical stance that he has, behind his back, walking back and forth, ruminating about something. And all of a sudden his face turned and he saw me. And I think he said, "Pidi, what are you doing here?" And then his expression changed and he understood immediately. And my mother let out a terrible scream, and I'll never forget that. It was actually worse than hearing about Yoni's death. Because in a way it was their death too.
הוא היה כרוך בקורבן מכאיב מאין כמוהו, הראשון בין המסתערים, הראשון בנופלים. בזכות מעטים נושעו הרבים, ובזכות הנופל קמה מחדש קומה עמוסה לעייפה. ועליו ועליהם אפשר לומר בלשון דוד, מנשרים כלו, מאריות גברו, יהונתן על במותיך חלל, צר לי עליך, אחי יונתן, נעמת לי מאוד, נפלאתה אהבתך.
We are all human. Some happy with our lot, some searching and searching. I don't regret the crossroads I've passed. And if there is more beauty, more flowers along the road I didn't take, I still don't regret it, because it wasn't my road.
יגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, ויצמח פורקני ויקרב בשפי.
On me, on us, rests the duty of keeping our country safe. We are united by something that is above and beyond political outlook. What unites us produces a feeling of brotherhood, of mutual responsibility, a recognition of the value of man and his life, a strong and sincere desire for peace, readiness to stand in the breach, and much more. This is a special people, and it's good to belong to it.
עושה שלום במרומיו, ויעשה שלום עלינו, על כל ישראל ויברוא אמן.